Mark Reynolds woke before dawn as he did every day. The sky was still dark when he slipped out of bed and pulled on his well-worn jeans. He padded quietly to Lily's room, careful not to wake her too soon. Through the thin door he could see her small body curled under a pink blanket, her dark hair fanned across the pillow like a halo. He smiled, then kissed her forehead. In the kitchen, Mark boiled water for tea and chopped fruit for breakfast. He hummed softly while he worked, a tune he and Emma used to sing together in better times. He tried not to think about the empty chair across from him, or the photo of Emma that sat on the counter. The ache in his chest would come later when the morning rush was done. Lily wandered in, rubbing her eyes. She climbed onto a stool, swinging her legs. "Morning, Daddy," she mumbled. Her voice was soft, still holding sleep. "Morning, sweetheart." Mark handed her a bowl of strawberries and yogurt, artfully mixed. He lifted her onto his knee. "Big day today, remember your piano lesson after school?" Lily nodded, her sleepy face brightening with a small smile. She took a spoonful and yawned. She missed her mother too, but she refused to let sadness rule her life. Mark admired her courage. They ate together, talking about simple things. What Lily would play at the lesson, which friends she might see after school, whether she wanted spaghetti for dinner. Mark loved these little moments. His job at the fire station kept him busy, but mornings with Lily were his favorite part of the day. By 7 o'clock, they were dressed and ready. Mark brushed Lily's hair into a neat braid, looping it with a ribbon. She slipped on her shoes and grabbed her backpack. He snapped a quick photo of her with his phone, another memory saved. He buckled her into her car seat, then drew in a breath and slid into the driver's seat. The heat of the engine warmed his face. Outside, streetlights still shone faintly, and the air smelled of dew and fresh earth. "Can I play a song on the radio?" Lily asked, her eyes bright. "Sure," he said, smiling. She turned the dial, and cheerful music filled the car. They sang along, off-key, but happy. Mark glanced over and caught her eye in the rearview mirror. "You're sounding great," he said. Lily beamed. Singing helped her feel close to Emma, her mother, who had loved music more than anything. Mark felt the tears rise but blinked them back. He could be sad later. For now, his daughter needed him to be strong. After dropping Lily at school, Mark headed to the fire station. He greeted his colleagues with a nod and a quick smile. They joked about the morning coffee and the training exercise they had planned. Mark joined in, laughter echoing through the bay. He liked the camaraderie. It reminded him he was not alone in facing danger and loss. His shift started in earnest. He checked equipment, inspected hoses, and made sure the engines were fueled. In the brief moments of silence, he thought of Emma's laugh, her gentle voice, the way she always knew just what to say. He missed her every second. The day was calm. They received a few false alarms, burnt toast in an apartment, a car that backfired like a minor explosion. In each case, Mark and his team handled it with skill and care, then returned to station life, cleaning, repairing, sharing stories. The clock in the common room ticked toward 3:30. Mark thought of Lily's piano lesson and gathered his gear. He decided to leave a little early, knowing his shift mate would cover the end of his shift. He got into his truck and drove toward the school, eager to see Lily perform. The sky was bright and clear. Trees lined the streets, and children played. On sidewalks as parents drove by, Mark felt a warm breeze through the open window. He relaxed, enjoying the normal afternoon routine. He picked Lily up at school, and she hopped into the car with a grin. "I played my piece perfectly," she announced. She pulled a folded paper from her backpack. Her teacher's note said she had done an excellent job. "That's my girl," Mark said, proud. He reached over and squeezed her hand. She cupped his hand in hers, her small fingers warm against his. They chatted about music and homework as they drove toward the music school, and Mark remembered he needed to stop at the grocery store. He turned down a side street. Lily pointed out a new ice cream shop on the corner. Mark promised they could stop on the way back. As they approached an intersection, Mark slowed. The light was green, but he noticed cars slowing on the cross street. Ahead, he saw a silver sedan that seemed to swerve. He frowned and gripped the wheel. Suddenly, with a sickening crunch, the sedan spun and slanted into a tree. Glass shattered, metal dented. The car came to a stop, smoke rising from under the hood. Mark's heart pounded. He pulled over, cut the engine, and rushed out of the truck. Lily unfastened her seatbelt, her eyes wide behind her glasses. "Daddy," she whispered. He held up a hand. "Stay here." He bent down to her level. "Turn off the radio and lock the doors. I'll be back in a minute." She nodded. Trusting him, Mark dashed to the crumpled silver car. The driver's door was jammed. He yanked on it, muscles straining. Finally it gave way.
I'm excited.
A woman lay unconscious, blood trickling from a small cut on her forehead. The air smelled of gasoline. Mark's training took over. He slipped his arm behind her shoulders and carefully lifted her. She was heavier than he expected, but he leaned back and dragged her away from the wreck, his boots sliding on scattered glass. He set her down gently on the grass, then slapped his hands together to dust off debris. The car engine hissed. Scanned the area, the fuel tank near the rear tire, a spark dancing dangerously close. Sirens wailed in the distance. Mark dropped to one knee and checked the woman's pulse. It was strong, but fast. He ripped a strip from his own shirt to bind the cut on her forehead. He poured water from a bottle he found in her console and cleaned the wound. A fire truck arrived, lights flashing. Mark stood as two firefighters rushed forward. "I got her out," he told them. She was alone in the car. Paramedics took over, lifting her onto a stretcher. Mark stepped back, watching as they loaded her into the ambulance. He felt the weight of what he had just done, his heart fluttering like a trapped bird. A police officer approached him. "Adia, the driver who rescued her." Mark nodded, his face sweaty. "Yes. I couldn't just stand by." The officer thanked him and asked some questions. Mark answered calmly, relaying only what he had seen. He asked about the woman's condition. The officer said she was stable and on her way to the hospital. Mark glanced back at the truck where Lily sat, safe and untouched. His chest tightened. With relief, he climbed into his truck, eased into the seat, and started the engine. On the drive to the music school, Mark's mind replayed the rescue. He thought of Lily watching him. He wondered about the woman, who she was, what her story might be. He hoped she would be okay. When he dropped Lily off, she threw her arms around him. "Daddy, you were so brave," she said, her eyes shining. He hugged her tight. "You're my brave girl," he replied. As they walked through the music school doors, Mark felt a gentle pride and a deep, sleepy tiredness. He did what he had to do. That was who he was. A father, a firefighter, a protector. He held Lily's hand and led her inside, ready to listen to her play and ready to face whatever came next. He woke early the next morning with a stiff neck and a sore shoulder. His muscles ached where he had lifted the injured woman out of the car. But as he sat up in bed, he felt proud more than tired. He opened his phone to check messages. There was one from his captain. "Great job yesterday," reported 8. Her heart warmed. He tapped out a quick thank you and set the phone aside. Across the room, Lily still slept. He slipped out of bed and moved quietly so he would not wake her. In the kitchen, he filled the kettle and set it on the stove. Steam rose as he poured the hot water into a mug. He sipped the tea, savoring the warmth. He stared at the photograph of Emma on the counter. He touched the glass gently. "Miss you," he whispered. The ache was always there, just below the surface. At 7, Lily emerged, yawning and rubbing her eyes. She wrapped her arms around his leg. "Morning, Daddy." "Good morning, sunshine," he said, grinning. He lifted her up and spun her around. She giggled. They ate breakfast together, toast with jam and scrambled eggs, talking about the day ahead. Lily told him about her history exam at school and what she planned to wear. He listened, asking questions and teasing her gently when she got shy. He loved how she laughed. After school drop-off, Mark drove to the hospital. He wanted to check on the woman he had rescued. He remembered her face pale, bruised, and frightened, and he worried she might suffer alone. When he arrived, he spoke with the front desk nurse. "I'm Mark Reynolds. I helped bring in a patient after a car crash yesterday. I'd like to see how she's doing." The nurse recognized him. "It's Mr. Reynolds. The patient is in room 412. She's stable, but resting. I'll let the doctor know you're here." He thanked her and sat in the waiting area. His mind drifted to Lily's piano lesson. He pictured her small fingers dancing across the keys. He pictured his own hands holding the woman's arms as he pulled her to safety. He felt the contrast sharply: danger, and comfort, fear, and relief. A doctor appeared and gestured for him to follow. He led Mark down the hallway, his shoes clicking on the linoleum. They stopped at room 412. The doctor opened the door. "Mr. Reynolds, thank you for coming. This is Claire Dawson." Mark stepped inside. On the bed lay a woman with dark hair, loosely spread across the pillow. Her forehead had a small bandage. She looked peaceful. He pulled up a chair by her side. "Hi," he said softly. "How are you feeling?" Claire's eyes fluttered open. She blinked and focus shifted to Mark. For a moment, her brow furrowed in confusion. Then recognition washed over her face. You pulled me from the car?" she whispered. Her voice was weak, but steady. "I did," he said. "You were trapped. I'm glad you're okay." Tears glistened in her eyes. "Thank you," she said. "I don't know what would have happened." He shook his head. "I would have done the same for anyone." They talked quietly. Claire told him she remembered the crash, but nothing after. That, painkillers, would blur the memory. He asked about her family and friends. She grew quiet at that. I don't have many close ties," she said. "My sister Emma died 2 years ago. We drifted apart after a family dispute. Tried to stay away from news about her. I didn't want the pain." Mark's heart thumped. Emma was his wife. He raised his hand and showed her a photo on his phone. "This is Emma," he said. He tapped the screen. "She was my wife." Claire leaned forward. She stared, silent for a long moment. Then tears fell down her cheeks. "Emma," she whispered. "Oh my God." Mark swallowed. "You're her sister." Claire nodded, her shoulders shaking. "Yes, I came back into town yesterday for work. I didn't tell her because we hadn't spoken." Then this happened. He reached out and gently touched her hand. She turned her palm upward, and he held it between his hands. "I'm so sorry," he said, "for everything you lost and for what we lost." Claire shook her head. "No, I'm sorry. I should have tried harder to stay in touch." They sat quietly, two people connected by love and sorrow. Then the doctor returned. "She needs rest," he said kindly. "I'll stop by tomorrow." Mark stood. "I'll visit again." He left the room with Claire's hand still in his thoughts. In the hallway, he took a deep breath. Emotions swirled: grief, guilt, relief, hope. He walked to his truck and climbed inside. The next day, he returned to the fire station. He donned his uniform and jacket, greeted the crew, and prepared equipment. But his mind wandered back to the hospital. He wondered what Claire's voice sounded like when she laughed, how her eyes shone when she smiled. He surprised himself. He felt a tug in his chest that had nothing to do with grief for Emma. That afternoon, he called Lily's music school and postponed her cello lesson. He decided they would pick her up early and spend time together. He drove to pick her up, saw her waiting alone in front of the school, and his heart soared when she waved. "Daddy," she yelled as he pulled up. He climbed out and opened her door. She ran into his arms. "Let's go to the park," he said. "It's a beautiful day." She nodded, her pigtails bouncing. He buckled her into her seat. On the way, he stopped. At the ice cream shop they had spotted, Lily chose chocolate, Mark had coffee. They sat on a bench under a big oak tree, and Lily told him about her classes and her friends, and her dream to play a duet with her piano teacher. He listened, savoring each word. "Daddy, are you thinking about the lady in the hospital?" He nodded. "Yes, she's my late wife's sister." Lily frowned. "Why didn't you tell me?" He sighed. "I wanted to make sure she was okay first. I wasn't sure how I felt." Lily reached for his hand. "Mom's sister. That's okay. You like her, right?" He smiled at her innocence. I do, she grinned. Then it's okay. He hugged her close. Her acceptance made his chest feel light. That evening, they went home and cooked dinner together. Claire's name came up when Lily asked about the crash. He told her how he saved a stranger and that she turned out to be her aunt. Lily's eyes grew wide. Wow, she said. My aunt. That's cool. He laughed. Yes, it is. They set the table and ate spaghetti, talking about Aunt Claire's hospital room and what she might like. Lily suggested they take her flowers or a drawing tomorrow. Mark agreed. After Lily went to bed, Mark sat in the living room with Emma's photo and thought of Claire. He felt guilty that he found himself smiling at the thought of seeing her again. He turned off the lamp and went to bed, sleep coming easy for the first time in weeks. The next day, he brought Lily to the hospital with a bouquet of daisies and a picture she had drawn. 3 figures holding hands under a bright sun. They walked into Claire's room. She looked up, surprised and pleased. Oh, Lily, she said softly. There. Beautiful. Lily handed her the flowers. Get well soon, Aunt Claire. Claire blew a kiss. Thank you, sweetheart. Lily asking about Claire's favorite flowers. Claire praising Lily's drawing. Mark watched them and felt his heart swell. The bond between them was forming, gentle and real. When they left, Claire held Mark's hand. Thank you for bringing her, she said. It means a lot, he nodded. Family is important. And I want us to be family. She squeezed his hand and smiled, the first genuine smile he had seen from her. In that moment, he knew things were changing. His life was opening up to new possibilities. Over the next week, he visited Claire often. He told her stories of Emma, her kindness, her laughter, and Claire listened, sometimes with tears, sometimes with smiles. They laughed together as they remembered Emma's silly jokes. At the fire station, his friends noticed a difference in him. He seemed lighter, more hopeful. He still carried sadness, but now there was also anticipation. When Claire was discharged, Mark picked her up in his truck. He ran to her, hugging her tightly. Claire looked at Mark and nodded her thanks. They drove home together, the 3 of them, a new family unit forming. Mark glanced in the rearview mirror at Lily's happy face and then at Claire's thoughtful gaze. He breathed deeply, knowing his life had changed forever. And as they pulled into the driveway, he felt Emma's presence with them, smiling at. The unexpected gift life had brought a sister reunited, a daughter's joy and the promise of healing and hope. Mark woke before dawn again, though his mind buzzed with strange thoughts. He had left for a quick run around the block, but his pace was slow. He kept thinking about Claire and Lily and how life had changed. He felt a mix of joy and something else he could not name. By the time he returned, sunlight was brushing the rooftops. He stretched against the porch rail, breathing the cool air. His muscles felt good after the run, but his heart thumped with restless energy. He sat on the step and wiped sweat from his brow. He saw a folded newspaper on the welcome mat. He picked it up. He opened it to the front page and froze. There was a big photo of Claire lying in a hospital bed, but smiling at the camera. The headline read, Millionaire heir rescued by firefighter. He stared in disbelief. Claire, a quiet woman who had sat in his living room sharing stories of Emma and Lily, was called a millionaire. He skimmed the article. It described how Claire Dawson had inherited a vast fortune from her late father, a business magnate. She had chosen to live modestly, giving much of her wealth to charity and staying out of the public eye. Some reporter had snapped her photo at the hospital, and now the story had gone viral. Mark felt a twist in his stomach. He read on. The article said Claire had donated a large sum to local schools and health centers. It praised her generosity and humility. It also mentioned that investigators had called her a key witness, a prime beneficiary of the rescue. Mark closed the paper, his mind racing. Why had Claire never told him? Why had she hidden her wealth? Inside, Lily appeared at the door, clutching her teddy bear. Daddy, can I have cereal? She asked. Her voice was bright. Mark smiled and folded the paper. He put it on the table. Of course, he said, leading her inside.
I'll see.
He tried to push away his confusion. He had saved Claire's life. They had grown close, but now he wondered if everything had been real. Over breakfast, Lily chattered happily about school. Mark served her cereal and juice. His mind drifted back to the newspaper. Had to know more. Cleaned up the dishes and waited until Lily left for the bus. Then he pulled the paper back onto the kitchen island. He read the full story. Claire Dawson, age 37, daughter of Arthur Dawson, founder of Dawson Industries. She inherited $500 million when her father died. She gave $100 million to her alma mater, $20 million to local hospitals, and an undisclosed amount to community programs. She was making headlines around the world. Mark felt proud of her. Her kindness was real, yet he also felt a sting. He wondered if she had chosen to stay modest because she feared attention. Or maybe she did not trust others, he thought of her. Soft voice in the hospital, her shy smile. She never bragged about wealth. He respected that, but he wished she had trusted him enough to share. He drove to Claire's apartment later that morning. He parked across the street and watched the building. It looked like any modest rental. No fancy cars. No guard gate. He got out and carried a small bag of groceries, milk, bread, fruit. He walked up the steps and knocked Claire open the door, surprised. "Mark, hi," she said, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "You okay?" "I read the newspaper," he said slowly. "About you." He held up the folded paper. Claire's eyes widened. "Oh," she whispered. She took the paper and peered at it. Her face turned pale. "I didn't know it got published so big." "You never mentioned any of this," Mark said, stepping inside. "I saw the headline Millionaire heir. Why didn't you tell me?" Claire set the paper on the counter. She sighed and leaned against it. "I wanted to," she began, her voice soft. "But I wasn't sure how. My father built a business from nothing. Then he died. I inherited everything when I was 24. I felt lost. I thought money would solve problems, but it didn't heal my heart." Mark listened, folding his arms. "I saved you from the wreck," he said. "You trusted me with your life. But you kept this from me." Tears glistened in Claire's eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know how to tell you. I worried you might think I was using you or want me for my money." Mark's chest tightened. He walked closer. "I care about you," he said. "Not your money, but your strength, your kindness, your family now." Claire's eyes softened. She reached for his hand. He took it gently. "Thank you," she said. "It means more than you know." He hugged her. The tension between them eased. She rested her head on his shoulder. After a moment, she stepped back and handed him the paper. "Keep it," she said. "Let's just be us, without all that noise." He nodded. "Okay." He set the paper aside and unpacked the groceries. They made soup for lunch, talking quietly. Claire shared small stories of her childhood hiding behind trees to avoid her father's business calls, playing piano. With Emma, when they were girls, Mark told stories of his life with Emma, her laugh at silly jokes, her love of baking. The house filled with warmth. In the afternoon, Mark drove Claire and Lily to the park. Lily ran ahead, chasing squirrels and picking flowers. Claire sat on a bench, watching them with a gentle smile. Mark joined her, handing her a bottle of water. "I want to help you," he said. "You've helped so many people with your donations. I'd like to join you." Claire looked surprised. "What do you mean?" If you want to fund a community center or scholarships, I can help choose programs. I know the city, the needs. We can work together." Tears filled her eyes. "You'd do that?" He smiled. "Yes, I can't solve everything as a firefighter, but we could make a difference together." She reached out and squeezed his hand. "I'd like that." They spent the rest of the day planning. They sketched ideas, after-school classes for kids, therapy groups for widows, an art studio for adults. Lily drew herself painting on a big sheet of paper. Mark watched her and felt hope grow inside him. That evening, they returned home. Lily had dinner while Mark and Claire sat at the table, looking at the drawings and notes. Mark typed details into his laptop. Claire held a mug of tea and spoke softly about budgets and schedules. They worked like a team. The hush of night settled around them, but their plans shone bright. Later, after Lily was asleep, Mark and Claire sat side by side on the couch. The lamp cast a warm glow. They shared a quiet moment, shoulders touching. "I never thought money could bring me comfort," Claire said. "But sharing it with people I care about, that's different." Mark nodded. "Your heart guided you before. Now your resources can follow that guidance." She leaned against him. "Thank you for trusting me, for helping me step into this." Kissed her forehead. "Thank you for trusting me." They sat in silence, the future unfolding before them. Mark thought of Emma and felt her presence, as if she smiled at the work they would do. He felt grateful for the accidental crash that brought Claire back into his life, and for the wealth she had hidden so carefully. Now used to build something good, and as they planned late into the night, father, daughter, and sister found a new rhythm, one born of loss, bravery, and generosity. Their bond grew stronger, promising healing and hope for all who would come through their doors. Mark woke to the soft hum of morning light in his bedroom. He lay still for a moment, listening to distant bird song, his mind drifting to the plans he and Claire had sketched out the night before. He turned and reached for his phone. There was a message from Claire. "Can we meet at Emma's favorite cafe at 9? I want to talk." He typed back a quick yes, then slipped out of bed. In the kitchen, Lily was already up, drawing at the table. She looked up and grinned. "Daddy." She held up her picture of the three of them, Mark, Claire, and herself under a bright sun. "Look, I colored more flowers." Mark smiled and kissed her forehead. "Beautiful," he said. He poured cereal into a bowl and set it before her. Lily beamed and began to eat, humming a tune Emma used to sing. Mark felt a bittersweet warmth at the memory. After Lily left for school, Mark drove to the little cafe on Elm Street where Emma and he had once gone every Friday morning. He parked and stepped inside. The air smelled of fresh coffee and warm pastries. He spotted Claire at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a mug, her eyes thoughtful. She stood when she saw him. "Good morning," she said softly. "Morning," he replied, sliding into the seat. "What's on your mind?" Claire set her mug down. She took a breath. "I've been thinking about the community center. Want to help, but I'm not sure I'm ready for public attention. That newspaper article, everyone knows about me now. I feel exposed." Mark reached across the table and touched her hand. "You're generous and kind and people respect that, but I understand it wasn't part of your plan. If you want to keep things private, we can find a way." She gave a small, grateful smile. "Thank you. I don't want to hide my past, but I need to feel safe. I want our work to matter to people who need it, not to become a spectacle." He nodded. "Can hold small invitation-only meetings to plan everything. We'll invite community leaders you trust, people who remember Emma and will honor her name quietly." He paused. "Then, when the center is ready, we can have a simple ribbon cutting. No big press coverage, just friends, neighbors, families." Claire exhaled slowly. Relief shone in her eyes. "That sounds perfect." They spent the next hour sketching ideas on napkins, art classes for children, group therapy sessions for widows and widowers, a small library with books Emma had loved. Mark wrote bullet points. Claire added her gentle notes about budgets and funding. The cafe staff smiled as they worked, offering fresh pastries on the house. They thanked them, and Mark felt a surge of pride in their plan. After they finished, Mark stood and offered his hand. "Let's go visit the old Dawson family home," he said. "Maybe you'd like to see it again before we begin this project." Claire hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, I'd like that." He drove them through quiet streets to the house where Claire and Emma had grown up. The paint was peeling, and the front porch sagged, but the big oak tree still stood in the yard. Claire's breath caught as she saw it. She opened the door. With Mark's help, and they stepped inside. Dust particles danced in the shafts of sunlight through broken blinds. The living room looked untouched. Tima's old piano stood in the corner, its keys yellowed with age. Claire approached it and brushed her fingers lightly over the top. "I remember when Emma taught me to play Chopin here," she said, her voice trembling. Mark watched as Claire ran her hand over the piano stool, then turned to him. I never had the courage to come back after the argument with Emma. I thought I was protecting her, but I was just building a wall between us. He nodded. You both loved each other very much. Sometimes pride and pain build walls. But now it's time to tear them down. Claire smiled through tears. She set her bag on the floor and lifted the piano lid. She pressed one key middle C and let it ring. Ah! Mark stood beside her, quietly moved by the sound. After a moment, Lily's small voice called from behind. Aunt Claire? They turned to see Lily standing in the doorway, holding her backpack. She grinned at Claire, her eyes shining. Claire's hand flew to her mouth in surprise and joy. Lily, sweetheart, she whispered, kneeling down to hug her. Lily hugged back tightly. I came with Grandma's picture, she said, pulling a framed photo of Emma from her bag. Claire took it, her tears falling freely now. Thank you, Lily. This is perfect. Mark watched them, his heart full. The tension of recent days melted away in the quiet house filled with memories and new hope. He guided Lily and Claire to the porch swing under the oak tree. Claire sat and wrapped Lily in her arms. Lily leaned her head against Claire's shoulder. As they rocked gently, Mark walked through the rooms, touching old family photos hung on the walls. He found a small portrait of Emma and Claire together, both smiling with their arms around each other. He took a picture of it with his phone, then joined them on the swing. They sat together in silence, listening to the breeze rustle the leaves. Then Claire spoke. I want to do something for this house too, not just the community center. I want to restore it so Emma's memory can live here. Mark's eyes lit up. It's a great idea. We can include it in our plans. Maybe this can be a center for small art exhibits or music lessons, something intimate, something Emma would love. Claire nodded. I want this to be a place where her spirit lives on. She looked at Lily. Would you like to learn piano here? We could restore this piano and have lessons. Lily beamed. Yes, please. She hugged Claire again. Can we have tea on the porch like Mom and Aunt Claire used to? Yes, Claire said, laughing through tears. Can have tea here every week. Mark took their hands. And let's get started. Tomorrow I'll meet with the contractor about the repairs. We'll make it safe and beautiful again. That evening, they left the old house full of plans and hope. Lily fell asleep in the back seat, clutching the framed photo of her mother. Claire reached over and gently smoothed Lily's hair. Mark caught Claire's eye in the rearview mirror. She smiled at him, her eyes warm and trusting. Back at home, they gathered in the living room. Mark spread maps of the neighborhood on the coffee table. Claire sat beside him, Lily curled between them with her drawing pad. They reviewed notes, local artists willing to teach classes, small library donation list, funding sources for repairs and renovations. They set a timeline. First, the family home restoration. Next, the community center planning. Then the small ribbon cutting ceremony with only close friends. Lily looked up. When will it start? In a few weeks, Mark said. So we have to do it right? He smiled at Claire. But we'll get there. Claire nodded, her face alight. Emma would be proud. They worked late into the night, filling pages with ideas, phone numbers, schedules, and budgets. Finally, Claire stretched and yawned. We should get some rest, she said. Big day tomorrow. Mark agreed and walked her to the door. He leaned close and kissed her cheek. Thank you for trusting me, he said. Shh. Thank you for loving my family. She stepped inside, and Mark watched her disappear into the hallway. He closed and locked the door, then turned back to the living room, where Lily lay asleep on the couch, drawing flowers. He carried her to bed gently, tucking her in with her teddy. Alone in the darkened house, Mark sat at the edge of the bed and placed his hand over Emma's photo on the nightstand. We're doing this, Emma, he whispered. We'll honor your memory the best way we know, by helping others, by bringing family back together. He let his words trail off and closed his eyes. Tomorrow would bring new challenges contractors to meet, plans to refine, memories to face. But for now, in the quiet night, Mark felt a deep sense of peace. He knew that with Claire by his side, and Lily's laughter in the next room, they could turn their shared grief into something beautiful. And as he drifted to sleep, he dreamed of painted walls, ringing piano keys, and a community center full of hope and life just as Emma would have wanted. The morning sunlight poured through the kitchen window, warming the wooden floorboards as Mark poured coffee into 2 mugs. He carried them carefully to the small breakfast table where Claire sat reading through contractor bids. Lily, already dressed and eager, sat between them, her hair braided more neatly than usual. Mark set a mug in front of Claire and one beside himself. "Big day," he said softly. Claire looked up and smiled, her eyes bright with anticipation. "It is," she agreed. She folded the papers and tucked them into her purse. The ribbon. "Cutting at the old house this afternoon? And then tomorrow we meet with the city council about the community center." Lily bounced in her chair. "Can we get balloons and cookies?" she asked. "Just a little party, please." Mark ruffled her hair. "Absolutely. Balloons and cookies. We'll make it a proper celebration." He winked at Claire. "Your sister would have loved this." Claire's face softened. She reached across the table and squeezed Mark's hand. "Thank you for giving me this moment," she said. "I never imagined coming back here. Not like this." He nodded, drinking his coffee. "We owe it to Emma and to our family. Let's make her proud." After breakfast, they loaded the car with boxes of colorful balloons, trays of cookies decorated with flowers, and a framed photo of Emma and Claire from their childhood. Mark strapped Lily into her car seat, and they drove to the old family home. As they rounded the corner, the house came into view, freshly painted in soft cream with new shutters and a sturdy front porch. Workers bustled around the yard, planting flowers under the big oak tree. Simple white ribbons stretched across the front steps, waiting. Neighbors peered from lawns, and a handful of friends they had invited gathered on the sidewalk. Claire's college roommate, the local librarian, a retired teacher Emma had mentored, and a few of Mark's firefighter colleagues. They held small bouquets and wore smiles of genuine warmth. Mark parked and helped Lily out. She ran to Claire, holding up the framed photo. Claire lifted her into a hug and kissed her cheek. "It's perfect," she said, stroking Lily's hair. Then Mark stepped forward and tapped a small bell mounted on the porch railing. The gathered friends turned toward him as he climbed the steps, Claire following close behind. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady and kind. "We're here to honor Emma's memory and to celebrate the beginning of something new." He glanced at Claire. "Claire and I wanted to restore this house to how it once was, a place of love, music, and laughter. Emma's spirit lives here, and now it will live on in the lessons, the art, and the community we build." He nodded to Claire. "Go ahead." Claire took the ribbons, scissors, and looked out at the faces before her. She cleared her throat. "Emma was my sister, but we lost touch. After she passed, I regretted every moment we didn't share. Then I was brought back here, by an accident and by Mark's bravery. I found family again, and I found purpose. This house will now be a small music and art studio. Lily will have piano lessons here, and I hope many of you will join me in sharing skills with neighbors." She paused, her voice catching, then smiled. "Thank you for believing in us." With that, she snipped the ribbon. Applause rang out. Lily jumped up and down, clapping her small hands. Neighbors cheered. Mark lifted Lily onto his shoulders as friends drifted forward with balloons and cookies. Inside, the restored rooms were bright and cheerful. The piano gleamed under new lights. Easels held canvases awaiting paint. Claire guided guests through the living room turned studio, explaining how they could sign up for classes and workshops. Mark stood by the doorway, greeting families and answering questions about schedules and safety, proud of how their vision had come to life. Lily ran to the piano and pressed a key middle C, nodding at Claire for encouragement. Claire sat at the bench and began to play a gentle melody, the room growing quiet as the notes flowed. Lily lifted her chin with delight and bobbed her head to the rhythm. When Claire finished, the room filled with soft applause. Outside on the porch, Marks. Fellow firefighters had set up a small table with refreshments. Claire and Mark stepped out, drinks in hand. Neighbors talked about painting classes, story hours, and music recitals. Claire's college roommate handed her a homemade pie, and the retired teacher pressed a stack of classic books into her arms. For the future library, Mark felt a warm glow. This truly was a community effort. As the afternoon sun began to tilt west, Claire found Mark under the oak tree. Lily ran ahead, chasing bubbles blown from a small net by a friend. Claire leaned against the tree trunk and looked up at him. "This feels right," she said softly, "like Emma is with us." Mark nodded and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "She is. She's here in every brushstroke, every note, every smile." He kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for trusting me." She turned and faced him, eyes warm. "Thank you for giving me a second chance at family." She slipped her hand into his. "And for giving Lily an aunt." They stood, together, watching Lily laugh with new friends. Then Mark nudged Claire gently. "Shall we try a swing?" She looked puzzled but smiled. He led her to the old porch swing they had repaired, sat first, and patted the spot next to him. Claire settled in and handed him a balloon. He tied it to the swing's chain. Claire giggled. We gave the swing a gentle push, and they rocked back and forth, side by side. "It's a simple swing," Mark said, "but it holds memories. I remember Emma and Claire here, laughing as they swung too high." He paused. "I'm glad it's back." Claire leaned her head on his shoulder. "So am I." They rocked in comfortable silence as dusk settled, the sky turning pink and gold. The laughter of children and the soft conversations of families drifted from inside. Mark breathed in the sweet air, tasting hope and healing. Later, after the last guest had left and the lights in the house dimmed, Mark, Claire, and Lily sat at the kitchen table. Plates held crumbs of pie and cookie bits. Lily yawned and rested her head on her folded arms. Claire poured warm milk for her. Mark slid Lily into a chair and gave her a gentle hug. "Time for bed, sweetheart." Lily nodded. "This was the best day ever," she mumbled. Her eyelids drooped. Claire carried her upstairs and tucked her into bed, placing the framed photo of Emma on her bedside table. Lily whispered, "I love you, Aunt Claire," before drifting off. Mark and Claire returned to the kitchen. Claire washed the last dishes. While Mark wiped the table, I think they worked together effortlessly, the ease of shared life in every movement. When they finished, they stood side by side in the quiet kitchen. Claire spoke first. "I never knew I could feel this happy again." Her voice trembled with emotion. "I was so lost before." Mark turned and took her hands. "You found your way back, and you brought us with you." He brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "We'll keep building your legacy, Aunt Emma's." She smiled through tears. Together, together." He leaned in and kissed her gently. A promise in that touch. They held each other for a moment, then Claire stepped back. "I think we earned a cup of tea," she said with a playful smile. Mark laughed. "Get the kettle on." He filled 2 mugs with tea and handed one to Claire as they settled on the couch. He wrapped an arm around her and pulled her close. They sat in contented silence, sipping tea, listening to the night settling outside. Beyond the window, the oak tree swayed in the breeze, its leaves whispering stories of the past and promises of the future. Inside, under the soft light, Mark and Claire made plans, art exhibits, piano recitals, literacy nights. And as they spoke in low voices, their hearts brimmed with purpose, love, and the memory of a sister and a wife who brought them together. In the morning, they would begin again. New lessons, new classes, a new routine of lunches, school pickups, and community work. Life would not be perfect, but it would be rich with meaning. For Mark, Claire, and Lily, the future held laughter, creativity, and the unbreakable bond of family, one they had nearly lost, but now would never let go.